Up here, as you notice, the competition floor is not in the normal heat setup. This is set up in such a way that it is a square that the athletes will enter and exit from, so that this makes sure that each and every athlete on the competition floor is running the exact same distance. So a lot of times, and even if you've been watching and following along throughout the course of this weekend, what happens, Scott, is all the athletes exit the building, of course. Now, they're out on their 800-meter run, but when they re-enter the building, sometimes you're like, oh, so-and-so's got the lead, and so-and-so, and then you're like, oh, wait a second. They have to run all the way around to their barbell. So it honestly takes a little bit of patience when the athletes enter and exit to get a real good gauge of who is where and how many reps ahead they are. So I appreciate the setup of the square because of that specifically. Now,
well, my question for you is where would you want to be in that square? Would you want to be out the door first or kind of chasing everybody down?
I would rather be out the door last, so that I'm to my barbell first.
I like that too.
On the last round specifically, right? Because we've seen so many leads exchange hands on the final round or 2 rounds, and you know what happens for a lot of these men and women that have that high level of capacity, man. They're like doing steady singles throughout the entire workout, and then if they've got it in the tank, they're gripping and ripping on that last barbell. So it just seems as though I would love the opportunity to get my hands on as soon as possible, even if that meant the rest of those 5 rounds, me navigating, working at what I felt was a slight deficit, kind of playing catch up, because you know how that goes in the heat of competition. It almost allows your mind to be focused on, okay, I'm catching up, or I'm slightly behind, even though you're not, technically.
Yeah, it just gives you something to chip away at. You can pick people off as you go, and it just takes you out of your head of like, this is 800. It's like, okay, pass one, pass another. But the only thing that I wouldn't like about being in the very back is if you had stairs, and had to go up a set of stairs. Like I believe they had to do that out in Carson. I think here they have a little bit of an incline.
Yeah, a little bit. They said it's a slight incline, but it's quite minimal in regards to like what the athletes were dealing with last weekend. But yeah, they do have a little bit of that as an obstacle, and you know how that goes. That gives you a little bit of a burn, a little extra burn.
For sure. Yeah, so as long as you don't get stuck behind someone that's just, lollipopping that first 800, it's going to shake out, I think, here after that first round, and you won't see too many issues there.
Yeah. Scott, what was the first year that you competed in the sport of CrossFit?
2012 was my first year competing.
Okay, 2012. I was just reliving my first experience in 2011. Back in the day, it was the first year that regionals ever existed. Can you talk to me, like, you played college football at Mount Union.
I did.
Right? I believe you played and crossed some paths with my brother-in-law, Lambert Budzinski.
Yes.
He was out there.
I did. Lambert. Jeez, oh man.
That's right.
Small world.
It is a tremendously small world. I remember when he came out to Utah and started doing CrossFit, he was like, yeah, I think you know my buddy, Scott Panchik. And I was like, oh, yes, I do. I do know who that guy is.
I remember it. I remember him saying that.
But, from your perspective in 2012, now we're seeing athletes re-enter the building, folks, and each getting to the barbell. Brooke Wells is the first one in lane 4 with her hands on the bar, already 2 reps in, as then we've also got an athlete in lane 14 getting their hands on the barbell as well.
Hiller.
And that is Ellie Hiller. So as we watch the ladies re-enter the stadium, we've got a packed heat. This is not just a 10-athlete heat. There are 20 athletes out there, and it ranges all the way from lane 20. We've got Jessica Kalagian, Katie Kaleroy, Caroline Spencer, Nina Vrojovic, Brianna Dunbar, Caroline Klutz, Ellie Hiller, Dana Perron, Logan Philo Luce. As athletes are already exiting the stadium, they made short work of the 10 clean and jerks. Jordan Zweck, McKenna Insulin, Kira Napoli, Ashley Wozni, Reese Littlewood, Nicolette Terragiani, Lydia Fish, Brooke Wells, Bailey Maraviglia, and Rachel Fricker, as well as Aniston Sudhoff.
And you had Ellie Hiller head out the door first with Brooke Wells right on her tail.
Right, and always keep in mind that relationship of that rate on the tail. Brooke will get to her bar first,
barbell first,
right?
Yep.
So if all things stay considered, right now we've got Brooke Wells as our early leader. Now, we were just talking about and having this slight discussion, Scott, about like the start of the regionals and the experience what was your rookie experience at regionals like in 2012, man?
Oh man, my first event, you'll laugh. I was that guy in college that wore bandana, right? Kept the sweat out of my eyes. Now it's a backwards hat, but I remember doing Diane, and I got absolutely murdered. And I was like, throw the bandana away. It's bad luck. Like, I blamed it on the bandana.
Rid of it.
I was like, got rid of it, never wore it again. And it was very humbling in that. Like, I came in, I was like, I belong here. Like, let's go. Like, football mindset.
As most college football players do, bro. I had the same mindset mentality.
And just got completely humbled in the first workout. But it was like very character building throughout that weekend because I had some events that did not go well, others that, I was able to shine in a lot of ways. And for me, shining that year was like accomplishing some of those movements. Like I remember we had a chipper that had like ring muscle ups, and that was still a really difficult movement for us. And we had to finish, I think, with like 3 ring muscle ups, and people were doing singles at the end of that workout. And I just remember, being able to do all 3, and it was just a very special weekend to sneak in and get that last spot to the games.
Yeah, man, gosh, I would encourage people that are watching this to be like, yo, 2012? 2012, what was going on in 2012? Well, go look and see what was going on in 2012. You can go to CrossFitGames.com, games.crossfit.com, go there, and navigate what those regional tests look like. Because I tell you what, man, it would be so interesting to watch some of today's athletes in the space go back and do that chipper, that regionals chipper.
Yeah.
Because there were so many things that were included there. It was the deadlifts at like 345 pounds, starting off with ring muscle-ups, almost like a couplet format. Yeah. Then after you finish that, you advance to another little chunkin' section.
Wall balls and toes a bar.
There you go.
And then we did a farmer's carry and like 30 burpee box jump overs on a 30-inch box. And that was like our endurance workouts.
Oh, yeah.
Like they were always these long, just gruesome chippers. And it's, it's interesting to see the sport evolve and, seeing these guys run outside for, 2.5 miles.
Right. Yeah, no doubt about it. And I think there's been this constant evolution, and I really love this. And of course, I always love to pick other athletes' brains about this. But it's like we had an interesting time where it was like work capacity was so very highly tested in your time where you thrived as an individual competitor. As we watch Brooke Wells re-enter the stadium, crowd going nuts for her. She will be the first at her barbell with Hiller right on her heels now.
Now, one of the interesting things is Brooke's an athlete that could do some touch and go repetitions here, and you might be wondering like, well, why is she doing singles? Singles,
talk about it,
is just a great way to keep your heart rate under control in something as aerobic as this type of event. So, her goal here is to follow that barbell down, keep her heart rate as low as possible, and then on that final round, you'll see some of these girls, I bet, do a few touch and go or whatever they got left. And that's when you really empty the tank and that heart rate's going to go through the roof as you go through the finish line.
That's right. Brooke only has 1 rep left. And I love that you bring that up, Scott, because when you look at the time that you spend on this particular event running versus the time you spend on the barbell with the clean and jerks, it's not even close to equal. And so a lot of athletes might be tempted to say, hey, I should really go fast on the barbell so I can get back out on the run. I'm going to do touch and go. So it's such a common pitfall, particularly more for the amateurs or the newbies at this level. But someone as experienced as Brooke, she knows and she's playing the long game.
For sure, and that's part of like having a great CrossFit IQ. And I think you saw a lot of really great athletes early on in the sport that just were smarter than a lot of other athletes. And I think now you see all these athletes have had a lot of repetitions under their belt, a lot of workouts to understand what the proper stimulus is, along with all the other semifinals to watch.
That's right. We are in week 3 of the semifinals, so these athletes have certainly had an opportunity or two as we watch Ashley Wozni start to make her way out of the stadium to pace, to watch, to practice, to reevaluate, right? They've done it all and under the sun, and of course, to not do any of these, Scott, would be kind of like having the answers to a test and not really going over them to the full. Now, I'm not saying that you might need to memorize all the answers specifically, but you should have a firm understanding of what it's going to entail. Tell me, would you have done all of these in completion? Would you have tested a piece or a part of them? What's that look like for you when you know the answers?
That's a great question. You look at, this is a lot different than the CrossFit Games when you don't know the workouts and you are going to show up and really like, the unknown and unknowable is very much present, but these guys have had a very long amount of time to prepare. And for me specifically, if I was coming into this week and had 4 weeks to prepare, I would probably run through maybe 2 or 3 of them and do some interval style training and get a good feel of like, you know, what the stimulus is going to be, trying different approaches and where can I make up a little bit of time here or there. I personally wouldn't want to run through like a whole weekend. There's just something about when you run through that whole weekend and then you got to do it again, that it's hard to dig in the way that you want to. But when you get to do that for the first time and you've been doing like intervals that were sprint and a little bit of rest, it just starts to feel a little different and it gets you excited to go and do it.
Yeah, I agree. I think you want to, hey, a lot like what we're doing right now, man. We've joked about it. It's like, hey, this is the appetizer to the main course of the coverage throughout the course of the weekend. You want to almost allow your preparation to be an appetizer for the main meal that's going to take place on the competition floor so that you feel like when the rubber meets the road, man, and you're in the thick of it, that it's not like you just relived this for the 3rd time.
Yeah.
Because we've been there so many times already, and it's hard to make yourself go to that pain cave. I think a lot of people watching and tuning in with us can relate to this. If you're newer to the sport, you have a tendency to whiff really bad with pacing, right? Yeah. We both experienced it. We were talking about it before we even got on air, where it's like it's easy to get the emotional draw of the open, for example, or to in a competition floor like this, where it's like, I'm going to run this fast, but I shouldn't have. I'm going to do touch and go. That was a terrible idea.
Yeah.
But for you, such a vet in the space, and then you to be like, hey, I'm not going to do actually any of these all the way through because I already know how to pace it. If you have to relive that pace, and it's a blistering pace several times, it's almost discouraging more than it can be helpful.
Well, think about it. Like when we go into the gym, there's days that we go in and you can hit a heavy 1 rep max, or maybe you hit a new one, right? But then there's days that weight feels so heavy, and it's like you get so many big moments of the year. Here comes Brooke.
Brooke back in at 11:55. Now this is round 3 for Brooke Wells. She's going to be in barbell number 4 right there, center right of your stage, hands on the bar, and no other athletes in sight. Now, Scott, Brooke missed out on the CrossFit Games last year, and you've got to really come with the understanding that like this girl got something to prove.
For sure.
And it's not to anyone else but herself. We certainly know that she's one of the fittest women in the entire world, bar none. But when you look at what she's doing right now, she's in the first heat. There's another heat to come. She knows they're waiting on deck. Some of the fittest women, not just in the world, but in history, are watching her. She's trying to set the tone.
She's definitely setting the tone. And she's likely been in circumstances like this, you know, at the CrossFit Games when you're not maybe in that last heat, but you got it in your mind that like, hey, I got to pretend like there's somebody in front of me. It's almost like Mario Kart when you're racing the ghost that has the track record and you're like, all right, somebody's in front of me.
Hey, that's right.
Whatever you got to do.
She's playing Mario Kart, and I'll tell you what, she's out to a good start. Brooke concluded her final clean and jerk at 12:47, and that was when Aaliyah Hiller put her hands on her bar for her very first rep.
What do you think of this setup with the square? Like, do you like it?
It's interesting and it's unique, right? And I think part of me, I really do. I like that you can eye the competition a little bit easier than the side-to-side, left-to-right that's needed in a lane, right? In a traditional lane sense. So I'm drawn to it. It makes it different from a spectating perspective, but I think there's a lot of head games that go into it too.
Yeah, for sure. You can kind of feed off that energy from the people from your left and right, and it's easier to kind of keep your head on a swivel, especially with 28 athletes on the floor.
We got Jordan Zweck with a hand up. She's got 3 more repetitions left. Many of the ladies, rep after rep. Ashley Wozni with a hand up in the air as well. Now, one of my big focuses on this workout, Scott, was to early pace, not race. Because I think it's really easy to be drawn out into a pace that's absolutely a no-go for what athletes have the capacity for. You know, a lot of us tend to lack the sense of a long game, and so initially it's almost like you've really got to be very disciplined in order not to be lulled into someone else's race pace.
Yeah, you could look at someone after the 3rd round. I feel like that's the round where you can look around and see how they're still moving that bar and what kind of sense of urgency they have getting out the door and how they're feeling. And that's going to tell you a lot about how those next 2 rounds are going to go.
Yeah, and we even see this with some of the barbell cycling, right? Like you notice it's I'm not even exactly what lane it is. I want to say potentially Well, it's hard for me to tell. I got a bad angle, but to the right of your screen, light blue pants, you're gonna notice that every time she takes a clean and jerk, she's gonna step away from the bar. Like step back, reset herself.
Yep.
And it's just her natural cadence. That's her pace for the bar, right?
Right.
Hopefully that helps set her up for a faster run, but typically 3 rounds in to a 5-round workout, if your pacing starts to be this belabored, you know that potentially you ran into a trouble point so far.
Yeah, it does you no good to be hammering through that barbell if you know it's gonna dramatically change that run, right? 10 seconds on a barbell and a minute longer on the run. Come on, so getting your breath back, I think inside here on the barbell and finding what that breathing cadence is for you on each repetition is really important. And it's interesting, you can watch each athlete as they set up after it.
Lane 13 there, Dana Perron working through her clean and jerks. In round 3, she's got 3 more reps left. Now, mind you, Brooke Wells left the arena at 12:47 for her final clean and jerk in round 3. We're now approaching 16:12. And now we're all out. Everybody's into round 4 on the run. These athletes are going through 5 rounds of run 800 meters, 10 clean and jerks. They are trying to lay it all on the line. These are the first 20 of 40 athletes that we're going to watch take the floor here, Scott. They're trying to set the tone and set the times to beat.
Here comes Brooke.
16:36, Brooke entered the arena. Now, we'll see when she gets her hands on the bar. It's like clockwork. She's running about a 3-minute clip for the 800 meters. 16:47, hands on the bar. I'm sorry, 4 minutes. So that was a 4-minute 800 there. Pace has slowed a little bit from rounds 1 through 3 on the run, but it's very consistent. She's still choosing to do singles, no touch and go.
The other thing is these guys got great weather. Like, it is very nice inside. Temperature outside's not crazy hot. I was actually really surprised when we got here because I told my brother Spencer, I'm like, hey, you need to be getting in the sauna. It's gonna be hot when you get to Tennessee. Pretty nice day.
Yeah, beautiful day, beautiful conditions. Not like you were expressing for triple threes for you back when that was a regional workout.
Yeah.
It was a little bit humid that day, you said. A little bit muggy.
They didn't have the AC rolling in the building that first night, and man, I'll tell you what, I remember running that last 3 miles, and I just kept thinking my face is going to go into this monitor. I might go down.
And I'll tell you what, man, people might not have an appreciation for this, but when you run through real space, there is a breeze on your body. It's a natural thing. When you displace your body through space, you're getting the wind, right, of the oncoming air. When you guys are running triple threes back in the day at regionals, that was 2018, I believe.
Yeah.
You were on runners, man. And not only was the air not moving because the AC wasn't working, but that really adds up in the way that your core body temperature skyrockets when you're on a stationary erg, unless, of course, there's a fan on a treadmill or something like that for you.
Right, 100%. And the runners were all directly lined up right beside each other, very much like the barbells, but in a straight line. And you could feel the heat coming off of your neighbors. And, you know, the biggest difference between running on those, like the runners versus outside is I definitely think when you're running on the runner, having a little more body weight, if you have a good cadence on there, it can actually be beneficial in putting power into that tread versus like here, you got to carry all that body weight
right.
throughout that whole 800, which I think makes it a really, really special couplet.
Yeah, it's a very different test, and I always appreciate that. It's the realism, right? We're back to this is CrossFit at its finest, right? Hey, you can lift, awesome. Well, here's a barbell, moderately loaded. Oh, and you can run, sweet. Well, you're going to displace your real body weight through space. You're going to run 2.5 miles, but you're also going to do 50 clean and jerks.
Absolutely, and to me, that's as OG as it gets, right?
Man.
Like when I think of CrossFit, I think of something that is on the floor that someone from the bleachers couldn't come out and just crush, right? You know, a runner comes out, they're going to get crushed on the barbell. A lifter comes out, they're going to get crushed on the run. And like, these guys are the epitome of fitness.
We've had a few ladies leave the building behind Brooke Wells. Lydia Fish was first on her heels. It looked like Ellie Hiller was there after Lydia, and then Jordan Zweck also heading out. Now this is the big push here. This is where athletes are going to have to dig a little bit on that 800, right? Like you get your hands on the bar, Scott, for the final 10 clean and jerks of round 4, and you begin round 5. What's going through your mind as clearly you're already in a state of discomfort?
Yeah, I mean, anytime you get to that last round, it's a little bit of like a breath of fresh air. You kind of see the light at the end of the tunnel, and you gotta just keep digging in. And you know, for someone like Brooke, you got to be thinking about that next heat and how every second matters on the run. Every clean and jerk matters, and you got to get after it and get points where you can.
I talked with Chris Henshaw a little bit last week as we got to share some time during this particular event on the broadcast, and you know, he was talking about how like it's that sweet spot. It's really round 4.
Yeah.
That's the one that's the hardest psychologically, because it's like you have the light at the end of the tunnel when you enter that last round. And anybody tuning in with us, we all know that experience, bro. It's like if you're in a 3-round workout, you're like, thank God it's round 3. But round 2, that's the one where you lose yourself a little bit. You're like, oh no, I'm barely halfway, or you feel bad for yourself, and you're like, I'm gonna slow down just so I can speed up on the final round, right? All these psychological temptations come your way where you're like, okay, yeah, it's all right, Scott. Let's slow down just a little, because then we're gonna have a final big kick. Like, how did you manage that self-talk or like motivation with so much on the line for you as a competitor?
You gotta. A lot of people say one event at a time, but a lot of times when things start to hurt, I'm like, I gotta get points where I can get points.
Come on, man. Yep.
Because the last thing you want is to finish the weekend and be 1 point, 2 points out, and you're like, if I would have just ran 5 seconds faster on 1-800, if I would have just touch and go, like, you don't want any of those moments ever creeping into your head. You want to know you did everything in your power.
And here she is, a little unstable overhead on her first jerk for that clean and jerk, where Brooke Wells is here. Brooke Wells is here, 2 reps in of her 10. Final round, we are at 22:05. She's looking to set the time to beat, and she knows there is a stable of 20 women standing by, ready to knock off whatever time she sets, and so that has to create that urgency for her, just like you mentioned, Scott. Still choosing to go singles here.
And sometimes when you see the singles and there's no touch and go, she might have really pushed that 800 and made up that time there. So, you know, singles aren't a bad way to go on the finish.
No, absolutely not. It kind of helps you really understand that, yes, she's completely at threshold. Even she wobbled and stepped back right there. But it is Brooke Wells with 1 clean and jerk to go. She will be your Heat 1 winner here in Event 1, 22:50 unofficially. Brooke Wells has set the tone, and she will bake and sizzle on the floor immediately after, as we see that as a very common go-to here within our space. Now, an even surprising exchange of the lead was Lydia Fish coming in at 2nd place. 1 more rep to go for Lydia, and she finishes. Wow, Lydia at a training think tank CrossFit. A no rep for Ellie Hiller here at the bottom, or at the bottom of your screen.
She's struggling with that lockout a little bit on that right elbow. There it is.
And you can tell this, folks, when you even just watch the athlete's body language. I'm sure you see it, Scott. It's like the legs get a little wider for the clean. They get even wider for the jerk. They forget to stand up all the way, or that instability's there overhead.
Yeah, a lot of people in these situations are thinking, what if I fail? But you need to be thinking, what if I succeed? What do I need to do? You know, big punch. Thinking about every little component. You got to be your coach in your head.
Caroline Klutz, 1 rep to go in lane 15, bottom left. And she's down for the count in lane 15. 12:10 unofficially. Ellie Hiller, 4 reps to go for her. Jordan Zweck still chipping away now, 5 reps to go. Urgency, urgency, urgency's got to be the thought. No matter where these women think they're finishing amongst each other, they got to know they're still fighting the ghost from the later heat that's going to come around the corner here.
We got some touch and goes over there in lane 2. Ripping on this barbell.
Yeah, she's ripping and ripping. That's Rachel Fricker from CrossFit Explode, going non-stop. Still hasn't shown the barbell any mercy. She's continuing to slug away. 2 reps to go. 1 rep to go. She's got it. Brought it home with touch and go reps. Wow. So for her, right, that's a little bit of a blend of both things, right? For you, if that's your athlete, you're like, hey, but could you have pushed to run more?
Right.
Was there more in the tank?
Well, you got to think about it. It's like, is it I'm going to get 10 seconds back on the run, or 15 seconds back doing touch and go clean and jerks, or vice versa? And I think you got to look at where your strengths are. You know, if I'm a better runner than I am on the barbell, I got to push the last run and do singles. But if I know that barbell is in my wheelhouse, I might ease up coming in the door knowing I can clang and bang 10 reps out on the clean and jerks.
Yep. And for you at that point, yes, you listen to your body, but more so you got to play the field. Where will you maximize your points? That's the hard choice you got to make there.
Right. And you look at these women, they're all laying on the ground.
Oh, yeah.
That's the indicator that you gave everything you had as you came through the finish line. You know, you walk off, I'd be questioning your
Jessica Kalagian going
strategy.
touch and go. Upper left of your screen, red top. No hesitation from her. 3 reps left. She's getting to the back of her square box. She's gonna have to. They're gonna let her ride it. Wow, impressive there. Lane 3. Bailey chipping away at these clean and jerks. She's got, it looks to be 3 reps to go. We're at 26:35. These athletes all fighting to bring it home here. Lane number 7, that's Reese Littlewood there, touch and go. Left just enough in the tank to hold onto that barbell. Hand in the air for Reese. If you guys are watching this at home and you're into media at all, someone please make a video of this event with "Let the bodies hit the floor."
Yes.
Let the bodies hit the floor.
Because I mean, I'm telling you, all 3 weeks, Scott, 3 weeks straight
In a row.
Bro, the number of bodies that hit the floor before the barbell on the last clean and jerk. It's like they reach lockout and they're laying on the ground before the barbell even hits the ground. I'm like, oh my gosh, it's crazy. It's crazy. We got another athlete still working here in lane 13. Dana Perron still chipping away. 10 clean and jerks to go. She's too deep. Scott, it's been quite amazing to me to hear from the athletes as the weekend goes on. Man, their calves are getting lit up, bro.
Yeah, these first 2 days are beating on the legs.
Yeah, it's funny because, like, for me, historically as a competitor, man, I love to hinge. Right, I got some long arms, I got a pretty long femurs, I got a short torso though, so the upright position in a squat, overhead squat, I've learned to do it, but it ain't my favorite jam, right?
I feel like we're the opposite.
Yeah, that's the way it goes. I'm all limbs, man.
Give me that thruster all day.
Yeah, and I'm like, oh man, that's a